podcast called Jellison Podcast.
He probably doesn't remember this at all.
Yeah, we work together. It's easy.
This is kind of real. I pull shit.
And so it's really cool to get to be a part of that.
Hey, you know how it is, though. Hey, when
you now tune into the biggest ever.
We're not here just to take part. We're here to take over.
I don't remember that. That's crazy.
What's up, everyone? We're back with episode 126 of the Jellison Podcast today. A very special guest, quite possibly the best beard I've ever seen. And the shot doctor himself, Joey Burton. Joey, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's a pleasure to be on.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on, taking the time to do this. I know you're out of town right now. So for people who don't know you, maybe not from the Indiana area, talk a little bit about yourself and what you do and where you're located.
Yeah, I'm a skill development coach based out of Indianapolis. I work with all levels of players. Currently, I'm with one of my NBA players in Philadelphia, George Niang. And so I traveled throughout the season with different NBA clients, trying to maintain their skills and their performance throughout the season. When I'm at home in Indianapolis, I work with high school, college players, and so just continuing to develop them whenever I'm at home. But a lot of my time is spent on the road with NBA clients.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what you did like in season for those NBA guys. I mean, how often are you going on road trips, I guess, with them?
Yeah, a lot of it is determined by the schedule. Obviously, if they're on the road trips, they're in and out of cities so rapidly that there's not a lot of time to go to them on the road. So we usually look ahead at the schedule and see where there's some homestands, 3-4 game homestands. And that's when we will organize a time to get out to see them and work with them on the nights that they're not playing. And, some nights if we need to make adjustments, after the game, we've gone back in and worked on their game, or if they didn't play as many minutes as they thought they were going to play, and they feel like they needed a little bit more work that day, we'll do that as well. So it keeps me busy, but it's very, disorganized, I guess you could say, in the sense of when you're going to go, because the schedule fluctuates so much.
Mm-hmm. And how do you guys balance that? I mean, it's kind of a 3-person team with you, the team that they play for, and then the athlete themselves. How do you guys balance that?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, we honor and respect what the team wants. That's the most important thing. If I'm trying to get a player to do something that is, not within the boundary or the box that the coaches set for them, or the role that the coaches set for them, I'm doing a player a disservice. So I really emphasize with my players of understanding and not even being afraid to ask questions of what their role is and what is expected of them. Because once we know what is expected of them, we could attack those very things that need to be done in order to succeed in their role. And I tell players all the time that, the role that you're given, focus on being successful at that. So many players are given a role, and I'll use George as an example. Great college player at Iowa State. Was a player that could do a lot. He wasn't just a post player. It wasn't just a shooter. He was able to handle the ball. He was able to really be a playmaker. And so when he got to with the Jazz, they put him in a box, and they wanted him just to keep the floor space and be an elite shooter. And so that's what our workouts were really focused on when I would travel with him in Utah. And I think it provided him an opportunity to show that he had an NBA skill. So it was a good thing that he was put in that box. But if I was out there saying, hey, George, I know you could do more, man. I know you could come off the ball screens. I know you could ISO a little bit. I know you could get some post-ups. If I would have just been saying that and working on those things, he wouldn't have thrived in his role. Now we fast forward to this season and him signing with the 76ers. He's been asked to do more of the ball screen actions. He's been asked to ISO more. He's been given the freedom to do more. And so now our workouts are reflecting that. And so it's important that for any player that is, I'm working with, or any player in general, is to really understand your role and ask questions if you're not clear what it is. Whatever the coach tells you, we want you to thrive in that role and continue to develop that role so that you could be prepared for bigger roles. Does that mean that we never worked on other stuff just in case, he was going to be asked for more in Utah? No, but it wasn't the focus of our workout. And it happened late in the last season. Donovan Mitchell went down with an ankle sprain. Mike Conley had a hamstring injury. So George started 10 games. And because of their lack of availability with guys, he was asked to do a little bit more. And he averaged double digits. He played very well, shot at a really high clip. I think it was like 45% from three. And so he was ready for that because he was given the opportunity for that because he thrived in the role that was given to him. So when we work with the player, I'm not in contact with the team unless there's somebody I know or one of the coaches wants to reach out. But I, get the player, or I really communicate with the players. What's expected of you? What do they want to see you thrive at? And then let's really focus in on being great at that.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like, George is a perfect example. He was a guy at Iowa State. I know they had other guys like Melvin Edgem and those guys. But like he was a guy at Iowa State, All-American, all that stuff. And then you go to the NBA and you're a small fish in a big pond, as they say. So, when you're working with guys that are in those similar situations, do you have to, do they have to be honest with themselves? And do you ever find that players are like not accepting of their role if they have a lower role on a team?
Yeah, you definitely have to be honest with yourself. I think that goes for anybody. If you want to improve, you have to have some truth spoken into your life. You have to have no ego when it is spoken to you. So many guys, George and I were just talking about this last night, that so many guys let ego get in the way of their improvement. And so when he came, and I met him in Indianapolis, and I knew who he was, but I can't say I was really invested in Iowa State basketball or watching a lot of their games. So when he first came to me, I didn't have much of detailed knowledge of what he was as a player. And so I just knew that in order for him to make it with his body type and not being the most athletic, is that he was going to have to become an elite shooter. And so instead of complaining and getting down when he wasn't playing for the Pacers, he went to work. And I've said this many times in these type of podcasts that pretty much every night that they didn't have a game or they weren't on the road, he was in the gym working on his shooting and trying to make himself a better shooter, knowing that was going to give him a chance. And he didn't see the results of that his first year, and he kept working, but it didn't lead to he had an opportunity. He legitimately didn't get an opportunity in Indiana with the Pacers. So when he gets waived and plays for the Warriors, goes to training camp with the Warriors, they waive him. He goes to the Santa Cruz Warriors, and he just, really shows a lot of his skill, but his shooting was incredible. I think when he was with the Warriors, he was shooting like 46% from three on like 5 attempts a game. And so a lot of guys, I feel like their first year, he wasn't coming to me and saying, man, I know I could play more in ball screens. I know if they just give me a chance, I could, I know I could break guys down, or I'm better than this player. I know I played that dude in college and I gave him 25. Like he wasn't focused on that. He was just saying, hey, what do I need to get better at? I'm willing to take a risk of not allowing. He shot 37% from three in college as a career. That's a good percentage. And so he didn't let that past success determine what he needed to do to become successful in the future. I think that's what hurts a lot of players. They look back at, well, I used to do this, or I've done this. I know I've done that. And that doesn't always determine your future success.
Mm-hmm. You can go up and down the list of 25 guys a year that were the man in college, did a little bit of everything for their team, and then they get to the NBA and they have that one characteristic that they excel at, like Duncan Robinson, for example. At Michigan, he was a good player, but I don't think a lot of guys were looking at him to get a 4-year, $90 million contract. finding that niche in the NBA, I mean, you're going to have success and you're going to get paid, which, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're all here for.
For sure. For sure.
And then, I mean, for guys, I mean, how often do you get guys that come in, new guys especially, that aren't really honest with themselves, and I mean, maybe have yes men around them, yes men or yes women around them, that don't tell them the truth, and they have to overcome that hurdle?
Yeah, I personally haven't really worked with guys like that. I'm thankful that I've had guys that are, humble, they work hard, they want to get better, they're coachable, they listen. And I think that's part of the reason why I've had success with guys that I've worked with, because they have those characteristics. I've talked to other coaches and trainers about too. It's a big word in coaching circles at all sports, is like a culture, right? Like you got to have a culture. Right now, Matt Painter at Purdue is just getting a lot of publicity because of the culture that he's developed, right? And I tell coaches that I talk to that might be recruiting a player that I'm working with, is like, hey, listen, I got a culture in my gym too. I got to maintain a standard in my gym. I can't just let guys come in and not want to work hard, kind of don't take things serious. They're not doing what it takes to be great off the court. So I got standards too. I don't have a team to coach, but I have a standard in my gym. And so I can't say I've really had guys that come in that maybe they needed to be told the truth, but that wouldn't listen to that. And I just don't think those type of players I would ever really gel with long term. So it might be something that we would be able to do for a month or two. But the players that I feel like have the greatest impact with, and our relationship spans over the course of years, are the ones that are coachable. They want to hear the truth and they want to be coached.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I didn't want you to name any names of guys that maybe come in and for a couple workouts and it just doesn't work. But I mean, you look at all the guys that you work with currently, you can go up and down the list, obviously, but all those guys have one thing in common. They're all grinders, and they're all smart individuals and players as well.
Yeah. And, so that's anything I could really take credit for. But it's a foundation that have been set or has been set by either coaches before them or parents or just on their own. But when you're trying to make it, whether it's going from high school to college or whether going college to the NBA, those foundational principles of being coachable, willing to allow the truth to be told to you, work hard, working on the right things. A lot of players do work hard, but they're working on the wrong things. And having those characteristics is a competitive advantage. And so many players think it's just like, I got to go out there and, be able to show that I can do all these things. And that's not the competitive advantage. A lot of times the competitive advantage is the coachable, the work ethic, the IQ, those type of things that will carry a player further. It's like a lot of players are in the NBA that could go back and say, I shouldn't have made it. This player should have made it. This player should have made it. This player should have made it. And most of the players I talk to that have had, stories like that, it's because that player didn't have those intangibles.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I talked about Duncan Robinson earlier, but it feels like basketball compared to the other sport, like baseball, it's kind of there. You can have a guy that hits for power, but not for average. But I feel like in the NBA, and I can't speak for overseas basketball all that much because I'm not ingrained in it, but I mean, it feels like it's a real niche sport. So, I mean, if you bring one superb characteristic to the table, you're gonna play and you're gonna thrive in that role. But if you're a guy that does a lot of different things, I mean, fairly average, I don't know how much of a role you're gonna have.
No, exactly. And then I had the opportunity to work with Duncan this summer and spend some time with him off the court as well, watching one of the NBA Finals game. And you see why he was able to make it. He had this skill, but he was very, very in tune to his game. Like he knew every detail of the shot. He knew how his shot was supposed to feel, and he just was really in tune with every part of his shot, just like an artist would be in tune with their painting. They know every little stroke that it took to make that beautiful piece of art. And so then I add on top of that, coachable. Here's a guy that is now one of the best shooters in the NBA. And we're sitting here talking, he's asking questions about what I think about shooting. And he's like really constantly trying to, learn and see if there's anything else that he could do to get better. And those are the qualities that succeed, when you're trying to make it. And you might not have all the natural talent in all these areas to be able to make it. What's going to stand out is those intangibles.
And I want to talk about, the science of shooting, because I know that's kind of your main forte in a minute. But for people who don't know, who are some of the main guys that you work with on a regular basis?
George Ning, I work with on a regular basis. Trey Lyles, he's an Indianapolis native. I work with him. Ed Sumner, we've been working with him now for 3 years. Fortunately, 2 weeks before the start of training camp, he ruptured his Achilles tendon. It was devastating because I really think he was going to take a big jump. It was this contract year, but really was just in the gym with him on Saturday. Can't do much but form shooting. But hey, when you have me wanting to do form shooting, that's like my passion. So I'm like, I'll do it. So those are the three right now. I've been this summer, I had Carson Edwards in the gym several times, so we were able to get back together this summer, and I've always enjoyed working with him. I've done some work this summer with Mo Harkless. I've done work with Dakota Mathias as well. Unfortunately, he has a little knee issue that he's fighting off right now. But man, talk about another guy that is just cerebral, works hard. There's not another player that I work with that takes care of his body the way that he does. Talk about maximizing every ounce of your potential. And I think there's so more that he could do. It's been an incredible, story with that. So those are some of the guys, I work with right now, and I'm helping and, just trying to help them reach their goals.
Mm-hmm. And obviously Dakota and Carson are Boilermakers, and I've had Dakota on my podcast. He's one of my favorite players in Purdue history. Yeah. His shot is so clean. He does a little bit of everything. He's the Swiss Army knife for us, and he's just he was a killer. And I have no doubt that he's going to have success in the league at some point. Yeah,
just another perfect example of a guy that was asked to, space the floor for Purdue. He was kind of put in a box, right? Didn't have to do much. And as we continue to work and improve, I saw that he could do a lot more than just what he was asked to do at Purdue. No bitterness. It was just what they needed. They had some really good players. He's playing with AJ Hammonds, the guy that you want to get the ball into, so you need the guys to space the floor. But when he got, especially his first year in the G League with the Dallas, the Texas Legends, they really used him as a point guard, and he was playing in ball screen actions, and he was really moving around and doing different things. And he succeeded, and it earned him a two-way contract with the Sixers, and he did some of the same things with the Sixers. So, once again, a guy that thrived in the box or the role that he was given, but he could do more. And guys like him and George, they didn't pout or become upset that they couldn't show that they could do more. They just locked in on being their best in their role.
Mm-hmm, no doubt. And we talked about George, kind of how he went from the guy at Iowa State to finding his role in the league. What about for guys like Dakota, who were asked of less in college just because of the talent around them and how they fit into that team? How do you guys go about improving them for an expanded role in the league or a different role in the league?
Yeah, we put them in situations that they could, possibly be in. I don't know much about football compared to, obviously basketball, but, the NBA is somewhat a copycat league. And so a lot of the things that those. NBA teams and NBA wants a lot of threes. So that helps a little bit that you could say, hey, listen, we're going to maximize what you need to do best to get the opportunity. That's shooting threes. And then we're going to work on things that you could do other than just that one skill that's going to get you to the NBA or give you an opportunity to get to the NBA. And so we work on those things, but the focus is, excelling at that one skill that will give you the breakthrough. And then we, prepare from there to get ready for other opportunities that might happen within the game.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's something that I never really thought of until speaking with you and the guys like Derek Grant and Jordan Delks and those guys that, I mean, you talk about Indiana, obviously it's a hub for basketball. I mean, the saying is in 49 other states, it's just basketball. This is Indiana.
Sure.
I mean, what was it like for you to come into that community and kind of be embraced in that culture?
Yeah, when I first came up here, I was working with a gentleman by the name of Ed Schilling. He coached here recently at UCLA, and then he came to IU with Archie Miller, and now he's out at Grand Canyon University with Bryce Drew. And so I came up here to work for him, and he was coaching high school basketball, and he had a skill development academy. And so I kind of was thrown into skill development, which I really was interested in, but also coaching on, Friday nights, Saturday nights in high school basketball. And we had one of the top teams in the state at Park Tudor. And I remember the first time it really hit me was we were in the Marion County Championship, and we were playing at Pike, and we're a small 2A school. And I think at the time, maybe, Park Tudor never won it. I know that for a fact, but I don't even think got to the final game. And Pike was maybe, they were top 20, I believe, in the nation at the time. And, we won a thriller, and just the energy, and we cut down nets, and there was a box, this chess box that has been passed down to the winner for years. And you can look in there, and there's artifacts from, the 70s and the 60s in this chest. And it was just it was a tradition that I never experienced before. And now, as I move forward and working with some of these college players and feeling how important, college basketball is to people that live in Indiana, and going to, the Crossroads Classic and actually having players compete against each other that I work with, it was incredible. I mean, the year I'm thinking of is Keelan Martin, Dakota Mathias, just spent most of the summer just putting in actual work. Keelan needed a really, strong defender on him because he was going into his senior year at Butler, going to be the man or the guy a lot of the defense is, really scheming against. And then Dakota just needed to be able to feel a physical presence on him more. And so they both had or both provided, some needs in their development. And so we played a lot of one-on-one games and taught out of that. And then, a few months later, they're competing against each other in Crossroads Classic. And it was just, surreal. I know this is Indiana basketball for you.
I mean, what's going through your mind when you're at that game or watching it, and you see, you're two guys going at it, and you're like, I don't know if you're rooting for someone, but
yeah,
it's gotta be interesting to see these guys have been in the gym going to war, and now they're actually doing it for real, and for the country.
Yeah, whenever I have players go against each other, or even in general, obviously if it's just one player on the court at a time, I want to see the team win. This is a game that is judged by winning, and so I want to see the team win. Then obviously want to see my player contribute to that win. And so when they're both there, I'm just focused on each player and what are they doing individually to help their team win. Are they executing? Are they doing things that we've worked on to maximize that opportunity to help them win, because it's ultimately what I do. I know this is a business that gets a lot of negativity, but my goal is to make the player better to maximize their opportunity to impact the team on winning. And so rather than being looked at as an opposing view from a coaching staff, I look at it as I'm almost an extension of this coaching staff. I'm trying to help my player to reach his goals. And every player that I've worked with in the college setting, their number one goal was to help the team win. And they wanted to go to the Final Four. They wanted to make the tournament. They wanted to win their conference championships, stuff like that. And so that's my goal. So when I see a player competing against each other, I know only one of those teams are going to win, but are they executing their role and the things that we done to maximize that role in a way that will help the team win?
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I didn't ask this earlier, but what years were you at Park Tudor?
I got there in the 2012 and 13 season. And then I resigned because I was getting too busy with working guys out, the NBA guys. And so my last year there was 2015, I think 2014-15 season. So it was a great experience.
I mean, you talk about a program in Indiana that has produced some killer. I mean, obviously Yogi Ferrell, Jaren Jackson went there for a few years, and then he went to Lala.
When I first got here, Ed Schilling said, "Hey, to make you some extra money, you could coach the 8th grade team. They practice before a varsity, so you'll just stay right through the varsity team." And so I coached Jaren. I was his head coach in the 8th grade year, and what's amazing about that story is he wasn't the best player on the team, and he was still long and almost like a baby deer. But you knew he was talented and he was gifted. And then he played varsity his freshman and sophomore year, and then after his sophomore year, I decided to move on and focus on full-time training. But he's a success story that I love to talk about, because he wasn't his dad played in the NBA. He wasn't worried about his ranking when he was a freshman. I remember his 8th grade summer, his dad got just a few of the local Park Tudor dudes, and they were just playing in local tournaments. And I think he actually had Calvert Chaney's son on that team too, because Calvert was at IU with Cream, and Calvert Chaney and Jaren were teammates at one point in the NBA. So he was on that team. It was just true, hey, I'm gonna grab a group of my son's friends and we're just gonna go play. And the purity of that was just awesome to see. And then for him to, be like that in 8th grade, to, playing in EYBL just a few years later and, really dominating, and then going right into Michigan State and, getting drafted, at such a high pick was just incredible to see.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that time frame that you were at Park Tudor, I mean, there's tons of dudes that have come through. I mean, I think it was a year or two before you got to Park Tudor, that would have been like Gary Harris and Yogi Ferrell, and that class is just insane. And then just a year or two later, you got Trey Lyles, like you mentioned, Justin Black. You can go. I mean, we could sit here and talk for 3 hours about just all the talent that's in Indiana. It's insane.
Yeah, it was incredible. The years I was in the high school ranks, it seemed like it was like producing 2 All-Americans every year. And that's a pretty steep accomplishment to be able to do for a state, and a state the size of Indiana as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, looking back on that time, do you have anyone that kind of stood out, like when you played against them and be like, okay, this dude is like really, really legit?
I mean, I would say probably the biggest standout performance I saw, was both of them. Was we played at Tech against Trey Lyles, and it was Trayvon Blewett was going to Xavier, Trey was going to Kentucky, and it was a battle. It was an overtime game. Trayvon Blewett had 51. Trey Lyles had 45. I joked with him today. I was just with them last week in Detroit, but I would joke with him today that he I think he shot 30 free throws that game. So he's getting a little assistance from the refs, but it was just an epic performance, and one of the greatest high school performances I've seen. The player, I guess I kind of go on different. When I was coaching high school basketball, the player that I coached against, I was like, man, this guy is like, go play in the NBA right now, was Derrick Rose. There was a pretty epic battle between, I was coaching on the staff at St. Joe's when Evan Turner was a senior, and Derrick Rose was at Simeon. And in the warm-up line, what I was seeing, I was like, this dude is not human, and so that was one of the that was the first time I ever was in front of a player. I said, this dude's going to be an all-star. And 4 years later, he's an MVP.
That's super special. I mean, looking back on my time, it was Gary Harris's senior year. I went to their sectional game. They played North Central in my hometown of Noblesville. So I wanted to see Ronnie Johnson because he was committed to Purdue. And that was probably the craziest, high school basketball environment I've ever seen. It was the whole gym was packed. We got the upper thing filled. I mean, you could barely move, and then Gary Harris hits a buzzer beater 3 to win.
Wow.
It's
when I was another time when coaching in Illinois, we went against John Shire, who's about to be the next coach at Duke, and they were ranked number 1 in state, and we had this huge Christmas tournament hosted at our school, and it was called the Proviso West Holiday Tournament. And John Shire's team, I think they lost the year before at the tournament. Then they went on to win the state, and then the first 8-9 games of the season, they were undefeated, and so we're playing them. And I remember he was averaging like upper 30s, and I remember looking at the score, and then they'd have the numbers of the points next to the player's number, and I was like, we held Shire to 31 points, it's pretty good, and we got 1 minute and 20 seconds left, and I'm like, we're gonna beat the number 1 team in the state. This is awesome. And one of our point guards is driving it down, throws an alley-oop to our big, and it goes through his hands, hits off the backboard, and he played at Glenbrook North. Boom, rebound. I think he goes out, hits a 3, and then they start to press. John Shire scored 21 points in 1 minute and 15 seconds. The only reason why we won is we kept hitting our free throws. But it was one of the most incredible, it's actually on YouTube, but it's one of the most incredible end of game performances I've ever seen. And what made it really, really awesome was completely packed. And then you had Coach K and Chris Collins walking in. They give them this special table, and everybody knows they are there. So that was one of my craziest environments that I've been in regards to high school basketball.
That's insane. I'm sure you have stories for days about just games like that and things like that. But for you, I wanted to talk about kind of the player coach / trainer relationship. So I think you're really big on that. Why is it so important for you to have that healthy relationship with your guys that you train?
I think first and foremost, that's what we want in everyday life. Life is about relationships, and I know my life is better when my relationships are healthy. And so whether I work with you or work for you, or maybe just come in contact with you for that day, or I'm coming in contact with you today. I never met you before, but I want those experiences to be healthy. So just in general, that's why that's the way I approach my life. But then now we're trying to have this goal reached, and there has to be trust, and there has to be, love. There has to be some truth telling. There has to be some, discipline. So now we're adding all these other variables to this relationship. And if it's not, founded on, some really solid foundation, then it's going to be hard to reach the goals. And so I put such an emphasis on it because it is something that will make the process easier. Doesn't mean that the process, becomes, like easy and we just could walk through things, but it makes it become easier when the process gets hard. Get hard. And what do you fall back on there? You fall back on your relationships. And so it's something that, I value in everyday life. I want people that I come in contact with to have great experiences. And I'm not perfect. Probably some people out there hate me, but I just want to do that in everyday life. And I think it just carries over to the players. And I want them to, know that they're loved, that they're being served, that they are being, in a place of comfort that will allow them to be who they are. So that means they might fail, but they could be comfortable failing in front of me. That might be that they tell me I'm struggling with this, and they could be comfortable in that environment. So that's why I'm doing it, is because of the relationship aspect. And I just never have operated off of, hey, I'll just get this player or use this player to be able to, start my career somewhere. I've always done it with passion to serve others and to have strong relationships. Doesn't mean they always last. People change, we evolve. Career path takes us sometimes different directions, but it doesn't mean that the relationship isn't important.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I had Seth Greenberg on, it's over a year ago now, but one of the things that he said that really stuck with me that was, success comes from trust and relationships in coaching.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have those two things, you're not going to be successful whatsoever.
Yeah, and I've been, one of the things that skill development's taught me, and I think it's this is my years in skill development. If I get back into coaching, has made me much better than I was before I got into it. And that's the understanding the importance that, every player wants to get better. And before the relationship even starts, if you could show them that you are passionate, that you are genuinely interested in them developing as a player, not about how you could use them to help the team win, not how you could use them for your own benefit, where like, hey, this guy actually, all we care about is a few rebounds and that's it. So we're not going to work with them on his shooting. We're not going to even really work with him on, driving the ball and finishing at the rim. All we need him to do is rebound the basketball and block some shots. If he does that as a coach, I'm good. We win games. And so they could sniff that out. So, I always say, like, you impact the player before you impact the person. So when you could really show that to players that I'm genuinely invested in you becoming a better player, then that opens the door to impact them as a person. And I think a lot of times it's flipped, that we want these players to do what we want them to do every little thing that we want them to do, but we're not showing them as coaches ways that we are invested into their improvement. Like, shooting, for example, I have yet to work with the player on their shooting that said, no, I don't want to work on this. Every time I've worked with the player on their shooting, there's just this joy, this excitement, because, and especially when they start to see it click and work, there's a joy and excitement because they've told me, like, man, I've never had someone do this for me, And so when you get them in that, state of joy and excitement, now when you're saying, hey, I need you to hit the boards a little bit harder, I need you to sprint the floor more, I need you to sit down and make sure you're in a stance and stay engaged on defense, they're going to be more receptive to doing it because they saw that you impacted them as a player. You basically said, hey, what is valuable and important to you, I'm going to invest in. And then I could expect them to return that for what's valuable, important to me as a coach, and that's to win and help the team win.
Mm-hmm. For you, what does it mean for you to make that impact on guys? You can go on social media whenever, like, during the off season, and guys post stuff and they're thanking you. And I watched your interview with Tyler Lewis. That was like a year ago as well. And he just said how much that he appreciates you. What does it mean to you to actually make a real impact on some of those players?
Yeah, I always say the players know. The players know. They know, and media, could really, push a narrative on a coach, whether it's good or bad. You know, and I've seen some narratives being pushed on really good coaches that were bad, and I've seen some really good narratives on coaches that weren't that good. And the story that was really happening, what the players were really saying, wasn't really what was the media was portraying. So I'm honored and blessed when I hear it from the player's mouth. And it's not a reporter necessarily asking them about, who, or it's not a political answer. They're not asking, hey, what do you think of your coach? And then I'm not saying I've worked with players like this, but I've heard sometimes players like, man, I felt like I had to give the political answer, not the truth. And just to hear last season, Ed Sumner, had a really big game, shot the ball really well. His shooting percentage continued to rise. And, when they asked him, hey, your 3-point shooting's improved, for him to just say, yeah, I've been working really hard with Joey Burton and focus, and he's been on me about my discipline. Like, he doesn't have to say that, And the other thing is invaluable to me is that, I'm in a unique position. I have no power over players. If they don't come to my workout, I don't have the ability to find them. I don't have the ability to run them. I don't have the ability to say you're not going to play next game, you're suspended. I have no power over these players. And when players continually want to come back in the gym, and whether it's during the season and they want to continue to work, I think that's the ultimate testament to that, to what I do as a coach, is that I'm making an impact, because I don't have any power or demanding power to get these guys in the gym. But when they're texting me and they're asking me, when are you back in town? Or, hey, when can we get back in the gym? Or when they might be struggling and they reach out, to me, that's the ultimate testament. And it's not marketed, which I love. It's genuine. It's not out there being published every week about how many times a guy's been in my gym. I post stuff on social media kind of as a necessity, but you're not going to see my, timeline just, filled with, every little thing I'm doing with the player, because that's not what it's about. It's about the impact, not the influence of social media.
Mm-hmm. And I think it was during the Tyler Lewis interview where you said the one thing that you're really proud of is, the fact that you have some of the guys that you started out with, and they're telling other players like, hey, you need to come work with this Joey Burton guy.
Yeah.
How much does that mean to you?
Yeah, another honor I feel, is special to me is, my organic growth. I'm not a master marketer on social media. I don't have hundreds of thousands of followers. So all my growth with, especially with NBA clientele, has all been word of mouth. It's been other players reaching out to other players saying, hey, this is a guy that would help you, and I think it's a testament to the type of player I work with. They could easily be selfish and be like, man, hey, I know Joey's really good and I don't really want him to work out with anybody else. But that's the type of player I work with. When they see someone else struggling, or they feel like there's someone that's willing to try something different, they offer my services. And so that, is the, biggest, compliment, is when a player is telling others about what you did to help them improve. And I guess the other, compliment would be one of my players, when I was working him out in high school, I was coaching him, and to, see him have a freshman on the other end when I was doing another workout, and him working with that freshman and teaching and doing the drills that we did in our workouts. I think that would be the other most special thing for me, to, produce other teachers, not just coach players, but produce other teachers.
That's special, man. And obviously this is the first time talking, and we don't really know each other, but you can just tell from the way guys talk about you and all that stuff that you've created a culture with what you're doing. And it's truly special. I
appreciate that.
And I don't want to hold you too long, but the last thing,
you're fine.
The last thing I want to talk about, obviously you're a shot doctor, maybe self-proclaimed at this point, but talk about just, I mean, your focus on shooting and those mechanics, because it really interests me as I used to play baseball. So
Yeah.
like that's pretty much all we're doing, especially hitting wise, and then pitchers. But that's not something that a lot of people really think about when they think about basketball or football, whether it be a quarterback working on his windup or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, never been self-proclaimed shot doctor. Something that Yogi Ferrell and I first started working with him. We were in a gym one summer night. It was late, and he was needing to get a little more arc on his shot. He was shooting it too flat, and we were talking about ways that he needs to generate more arc. And one of the ways is making sure your elbow gets under the ball and you're pushing your elbow up and through the ball to generate that arc. And he was shooting a little bit deeper, where he thought he needed to shoot it more at the rim. And I'm like, no, just trust your arc. Push it up there, get your elbow under the ball. And he just started to splash out. Like it was maybe 15 in a row. Then he missed one to get hot again. So I get home from that workout, and I don't know, at the time I just must not have been on Twitter much or whatnot. And all of a sudden I just get on Twitter. And I know I hadn't posted something for maybe a week or so, and I just got all these notifications. And Yogi tweeted out, "I'm gonna start calling at Joey Burton the shot doctor." And I was like, "Whoa, man, this is crazy." And it was like surreal because he's the point guard at Indiana, and I mean at the time he was going down as one of the best point guards to ever play at Indiana, and I think maybe outside of Isaiah Thomas he is. And so it was like just surreal. So never self-proclaimed. He kind of gave me that. And people were asking me like, you need to check about patents or copyright that. I'm like, no, I'm sure it's already been used. But what goes into that is when I was first starting this, I was at a spot where Ed Schilling left to go to UCLA, and he gave me the gracious opportunity to just kind of keep doing skill development and continue to do what I was doing with him. But at the time, I didn't know that this was not about just a name brand as far as a company or an organization. Players came to the person, the one that was actually doing the training. And so I didn't realize that. And our numbers dipped because Ed was so spectacular at what he did, and that people didn't know who I was. So social media was getting popular with the videos. Twitter was out. I think Vine was out and going on back then. Instagram started allowing those 15-second video clips. I started to see a lot of these trainers posting stuff that I was like, man, you know what? Those things might happen for one player, and they might only happen 2 or 3 times in a game. And so what am I going to do to separate myself and have immediate measurable impact? And it's hard to measure how well your handles are in a game, but after every game, you got to measure and stick with your shooting. You know exactly how many shots you took, how many you made, all right? And so I just kept focusing on that. It was something I needed to focus on when I was a player. I didn't have a trainer, but I read a lot of books. I would go in the gym. I think it was one of the best things for me outside of just working with some youth that could care less if I was telling them the right thing or not. But I was focused on trying the things that were in the book, and I saw what worked and what didn't work. So that gave me a passion to help players on shooting. And so when I was pretty much doing this now as only me, and I have to, separate myself, I started working with players on shooting, and I just would work with, I only could get like 6th, 7th, 8th graders, maybe a freshman here or there, nobody big time or anything. But at the time, I just said, hey, I got to focus on whoever's in my gym. I can't focus on who I want to get in the gym or who's working with who. I got to focus on what is going on in my gym. And whoever is there, that's going to be like my NBA player. That's going to be the best player I've ever worked with. So how can I get these players better? And for about a year and a half there, it really taught me and developed my philosophy of shooting. And then when I got the opportunity to work with NBA players, a lot of the things that they were struggling with were the same things 7th, 8th freshman players they're struggling with. And so I would ask my players, I'd say, hey, when did you start shooting like this? Oh, I can't remember, like 5th, 6th grade. And I'm like, you know what? That's amazing. These players I was helping in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and now I'm helping NBA players. it's those habits that they had in the 6th, 7th, or 8th grade that are causing them not to be able to be their best as far as shooting when they're 20, 21, 22 years old. And the reason for that is they were usually all, really great athletes. They could use their physical size, to overpower. So they were used a lot of natural gifts. But then when it got to that highest level and they needed shooting, it necessarily wasn't there. And so those 2 years of just working with youth players and really being like focused on them, not worried about, hey, who's working with me or who's not working with me or who do I want to work with, but really being focused on those youth players really set my foundation philosophy wise on shooting. And so when I would see a professional player struggle with the shot, for example, one of my players would shoot the ball like in the middle of his face or over on the left side, and we needed to get the ball over to the right side. Why? Because I had saw several youth players shooting the ball on the opposite side, their non-dominant side, and their alignment was off, their arc was off. And whenever I got them to get back on the right side, and it helped their alignment, it helped their arc, it helped with their rhythm. And so I was like, well, hey, it worked for this young man. I'm sure it's going to work for this guy that's actually, going to be a pro or is a pro already. And seeing those things, translate from youth to these pros was a big confidence builder for me. And you only get sometimes one opportunity to make sure it's right with these NBA players, because if they're trying stuff and it's not working, they're not going to continue to come back. So it was a blessing. I had those several years of working with a lot of youth players, trying to develop my philosophy, seeing what worked and what didn't work on, mechanical corrections to really hone in on what I needed to do. And at the time, I didn't know NBA players were going to be, reaching out, or I was going to have those opportunities. But it also just is a good life principle. Like sometimes if you just stay locked in and focused on where you're at, what you're doing, being your best at what you're doing at that moment, you don't know what opportunities are being prepared for down the road.
And when you're watching games, it doesn't necessarily be guys that you work with or want to work with or whatever, but like off the top of my head, like Roosevelt Jones has one of the ugliest free throws I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have a cow when you're watching that on TV? Or I mean, like Lonzo Ball at UCLA, he was shooting from way over there.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example. Lonzo was shooting way on his left side, but over the years now he's gotten the ball to his right side, and now he's his 3-point shooting's improved, and he's I wouldn't say he's an elite shooter, but he's much more effective. And it's not like, hey, just leave him open and he'll probably miss. But there's some times where I see guys that have a lot of skill, a lot of talent, and their shot is fixable, or they're doing some things that I know that if they didn't do would help them a ton. But I can't help everybody, and I just don't. I don't have I don't have this passion to be working with 30 guys either. What I do is time consuming because I invest a lot of time. Travel, watching film, making sure I try and am able to watch the game. Also, my workouts at home conflict with that, but then I'll record it, watch the game later. So I wouldn't have the time to have the intensity of the impact if I just tried and get a whole bunch of players and try and work with every player that I see that needs shooting improvement. It's shooting is something that needs constant attention. And, if you have too many players, it's hard to give that constant attention.
And I mean, you keep saying things that remind me of stuff like how you're talking about, I mean, like investing how much time that you do with these athletes. Yeah. And I mean, it reminds me of, the saying quality, not quantity. And look at some of these trainers and whatnot, they have a ton of people, but they're not really giving individual attention to these young athletes, especially. And then you look at people from Indiana, like yourself, Taylor Ware, DG, like I mentioned, the Delks. I mean, you guys all have individual relationships with all these players.
Yeah. And I mean, some of my players have used other trainers in the off season because my family's located in Indianapolis. They're out in LA. I can't get out there full time. And so they use others, in the off season. But, one thing that, I pride myself on is when it gets into the heat of the battle and they're going to, their games every day, that I'm able to walk with them through that. And, that, like I said, is time consuming. And I love that it is time consuming, but it does limit the time that I have to be able to, grow and more clients or have a quantity amount of clients. I want those relationships to be quality. I want what we're doing to be effective, and it really will, allow them to be their best.
Hey, that's what makes you so special, man. But like I said, I don't want to hold you too long, so I'm gonna wrap this up. But I mean, thank you so much for coming on and doing this. I've been a fan of yours for quite some time now with your work with Purdue players and just the Indiana guys. But I mean, I wish you all the best going forward, and I mean, you're gonna have success going forward.
Well, no, I appreciate that, and thank you for reaching out to me. I'm always, enjoy being on podcasts. Just hopefully I can, my words helped one coach or one player or just a general listener. That's always my hope, is to impact others. So hopefully, this does that for anybody that's listening, and for those that have listened, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. If I could be of help to you, my Twitter handle is just Joey Burton. My Instagram handle is Coach Joey Burton. And if I can help you at any time, feel free to reach out. And I appreciate you allowing me to be on the podcast.
Yes, sir. Hey, anytime. And like you said, follow the man. Hey, thank you so much, and best of luck going forward.
Thanks, man. You have a good one.
Yep, you too.
Bye.